This is from Charles Sages, who was an MD, 1921, who had some ideas which Dr. Weaver adhered to these ideas, and they're not ideas that are congruent with how we see medicine today. But I think it's important because these ideas did form a lot of her research. He claimed that the anterior pituitary had sensory structures that detected bloodborne toxins. We don't see any proof of that today, but was his view, and it was shared by Dr. Weaver. He took issue with the prevailing view of the pituitary as a secreting gland. He said, and this is a quote from him, just because an extract of an organ yields a physiologic effect does not mean that it's a ductless gland. Well, this hasn't been proven at all, what he has said. He viewed the sensory cells of the anterior lobe as aiding the organism in defense against toxins via the adrenal and thyroid glands. We know that the thyroid gland to be stimulated from the anterior lobe. He postulated that a sympathetic center in the posterior pituitary controlled the adrenal and thyroid glands, and we don't know that to be true at all. But these were factors in helping to develop Charlotte Weaver's view of the cranium. Some other pretty way out ideas that she had that I think are kind of cool. So they're really not proven, but this is the way that she looked at things: avant-garde ideas of light, vibration, and bone. She said the brain needed to be housed within true osseous tissues that were calcium phosphate based to shield the brain against light sensitive biochemicals and ingredients of the CNS. She based much of this on evolution and compares calcium carbonate shells of invertebrates to vertebrates. She said that protection from vibration, which Dr. Weaver interpreted as all non-chemical energies. So she was considering vibration as an energy, which is really very neat because that ties in with quantum mechanics in today's most advanced physics theories. She figured that protection from vibration, and she classified this as wavelength inclusive of infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, that these were all perceivable by the human organism. And she was thinking this a long, long time ago. Today, vibration absolutely has applications and mechanical implications, X-rays, magnetic fields, sound waves, and much, much more. 3 primary brain vesicles. Again, this is all Dr. Weaver's thinking. She said that the prosencephalon, which would be our cerebrum, that this receives vibratory energies from the universe, from other people, from the earth. The mesencephalon was the integrating center. The midbrain integrated these vibratory energies. Chemical energies were received and created in the rhombencephalon. All the integration is happening in the midbrain, according to Dr. Weaver. Some other, just other insights and observations as I was studying some of her writings. She had a lot of triadic relationships. It seemed like 3 was really a magic number. She made quite a bit of mention about the fetal membranes developing as 3 concentric sacs: the trophoblast, yolk sac, and the amnion. So we have 3. Her cranial vertebrae is a triad: the dorsum stellate, basis sphenoid, basiocciput. The brain is a triad, the way she's looking at prosencephalon, mesencephalon, rhombencephalon, going from reptilian brain, midbrain, and our most advanced brain. She looked at a functional triad that we had chemosynthetic materials. These were affecting really the rhombencephalon. We had vibrosynthetic materials. This is happening up in our cerebrum, in our highest part. And we had an autochthonous integration. Autochthonous means indigenous or native. So the integration of the chemosynthetic materials and the vibrosynthetic materials, that was happening in the mesencephalon. Some qualities of non-chemical energies. Vibratory energies, Dr. Weaver described with qualities of waveform, frequency, velocity, intensity, direction, and translator movement. With the exception of translator movement, this could have been electron physics, the way she looked at it. She said these vibratory energies have the ability to pass through each other, to augment each other, to destroy, or to transmute each other. Again, that is perfectly at home if we're discussing quantum physics. She said that these vibratory energies can penetrate and alter the properties of matter. I really think that these insights put her far ahead of her time, even with some of the other things that are discrepancies of how we look at embryology and endocrinology in the body. It is noteworthy that in her personal notes, she indicated that she believes these waveforms could possibly travel faster than the known speed of light. Well, that hasn't been shown by any theories today. So nothing's been shown to exceed the speed of light. Quantum physics does tell us today about the process of non-locality. Non-locality would supersede any speed that we can actually think of, but that will be a subject for another lecture another time about non-locality and how that works into the osteopathic theories. Eye reception. This is all Dr. Weaver. I put asterisks here to denote some terms that are words that she uses that no one else is using. So I can't really make sense of it except to describe what she's talking about. So she talked about the eye receiving phototopic sensations. Well, that would really be your color sensation, differentiating light waves, producing color. The scotopic differentiates intensity producing crepuscular vision, which is night vision. She uses the term protopathic or discritic light sense. We don't use that term to describe crepuscular vision in traditional medicine. And phototopic color description, she calls it epicritic light sense. And again, that's not something that is a relatable term in current medical theories. Epicritic, we think of epicritic touch. Epicritic touch is me putting my hands in my pockets and being able to feel that I'm touching keys or coins to be able to discriminate things. So what she's calling phototopic, you're discriminating different colors, but the term epicritic we don't properly use. And then photostatic, again, this is her term, differentiating light frequencies from other vibratory frequencies. Something not producing vision or sensory images, but stimulates the mesencephalon to integrate the vibration received by the prosencephalon. And that goes back to the previous slides that we talked about, that she said chemical energies were coming up through the rhombencephalon and being made by the rhombencephalon, being changed by the rhombencephalon. Vibration frequencies were being received by the prosencephalon, and that both of these were being interpreted, if you will, by the mesencephalon, by the midbrain. The eye and pineal, she felt the eye and the pineal gland were vibrosynthetic receivers. Dr. Weaver felt that osseous structures would inhibit necessary vibrations, and therefore, in utero, the developing fetus would receive the mother's vibrations because the fetal cranium has not been fully developed. After birth, the eye would remain the receiver of exterior vibrations because it's not encompassed by the cranium itself. So it's a receiver of vibrations while the pineal was protected within the osseous cranium. The pituitary increases in size till maturity, then it decreases throughout life. The pineal is an embryonal organ that achieves full functioning status approximately age 7 and continues to increase throughout life. This follows with Dr. Weaver's theory that the pineal she felt was associated with quote unquote higher awareness from her perspective. What does higher awareness mean? That means whatever you want it to mean. So if we look at the brain as a reptilian brain, a midbrain, and a cerebrum, and if you're considering that the brain has been developing, and we have from a rudimentary survival mode to a very advanced neocortical thinking mode, this is perhaps for Dr. Weaver the next step in awareness or spirituality. The pineal and wisdom, some assertions made by Dr. Weaver. She felt that maturation is essential for mature wisdom, characterized by a heightening of the prosencephalic encephalic activities of consciousness. This is the higher parts of our brain. This is what gives us knowledge, observation, and experiences we grow from. She felt that this results in pure abstraction, higher thinking. Vibratory energy received by the pineal is further fabricated in the prosencephalon, which is paralleled by decreased rhombencephalonic activity. So the higher your awareness would become, the less you would require your reptilian brain, according to Dr. Weaver. In my view of things, and I like this fantasy that she is posing, and I'm not saying I endorse it or I don't endorse it, but I like the idea of it. We could look at the prosencephalon, midbrain, and rhombencephalon and the Jacksonian dissolution sort of filter, which is that the rhombencephalon, while maybe not as necessary, it's still running in the background, because we do see as things start to break down, when people get demyelinating, debilitating diseases, when we lose our higher neocortical functions, we see lower functions kick in as though they've never lost a step. Question from Teresa is, Dr. Sutherland Weaver were contemporary. Did they agree on any cranial concepts? Well, to my knowledge, they didn't communicate with each other. So there was no back and forth between Charlotte Weaver and Dr. Sutherland. There's nothing that indicates that at all. Dr. Sutherland, even Dr. Sutherland has things that he contradicted himself later on, but we don't see them. We don't see them agreeing on things. We don't know from Dr. Weaver whether she believed in a PRM type of thing, like Dr. Sutherland did, or whether it was just that movement that happened ancillary to normal movement. So we don't know that they agreed on any cranial concepts. We don't know. Dr. Weaver doesn't seem to indicate anything about cerebrospinal fluid. And Dr. Sutherland went from looking at bones, then to membranes, then to fluid. So I don't see any correlation with that, anything that I've read. Another question from Swati is, treating a particular portion of the sphenoid, can we see any changes with the hormonal secretions? I can only answer that, which is I don't know how I would prove that. I don't know any way to say yes that you are or no that you aren't. You can sort of deflect to find it, fix it, and leave it alone. Find lesions in the system, change the lesions, and then see if that changes other parameters. But in order to answer that question definitively, you'd have to take hormone measurements before and after treatment. So I don't know that anyone has done anything like that in any kind of controlled way. So I'd like to say that we can make positive change, but I have no way to prove anything like that. Question from Kenneth. In terms of her energetic work on the cranium, do you know what she did on the patient? No one knows. The one who's really has cataloged all of her information has been Margaret Sorrell, Dr. Sorrell, Sorrell, if I'm spelling it correctly. And she cataloged all of her writings. So no one knows what she did to the patient. Did that answer? I hope that did that answer go out live? Did everyone hear it? I hope they did. Mike Brewster, with regard to the pineal, I understood the gland goes through a couple of active phases and then calcifies. Is this in conflict with Weaver? She didn't talk about calcification. She just talked about increase in size. So I don't know that it's in conflict. Did Dr. Weaver have manual therapy methods for correcting intracranial lesion subluxations? You already answered this. Yeah, I already did. I answered it. No one knows what she did. Margaret Sorrell's the one who wrote the most, collected most of the writings to reproduce the original writings. And actually, Suresha, you're out there with Maud Neerman. Her and Margaret were pretty close. So you're at a pretty good source for that. But to my knowledge, no one knows what exactly she did. And Dr. Sorrell indicates that directly in her writing of that. No one knows what she did. Is there anything about the concept of the potential movement of the three cranial vertebrae which we can utilize clinically? No, for me, it's historical because I would still try to increase cranial motion in all the cranial bones, just using all the cranial techniques that we have. But to try and isolate and say you have a subluxation, which you would say there's a subluxation in the sphenoid, I think we could use Dr. Sutherland's, you know, torsion lesions, hibernating rotation lesions, so forth. And this is how we would make our corrections. What she did, we don't know. Mike Brewster's asking, did Dr. Weaver study under Dr. Still? Yeah, she had to because she graduated in 1912. Dr. Still died in 1917. From Jeremiah, what makes her so significant in osteopathy? Seems she had concepts, but nothing on technique, specific outcomes, etc. What makes her stand out? Well, what makes her stand out is that she just had these radical ideas. You would have to understand, or you would just have to give her credit for having graduated osteopathy, studied with Dr. Still, went in her own direction. And this lecture, I'm not giving this lecture and saying her observations are true. I'm just giving you observations of a heretic. And heresy in osteopathy, it's a part of our ground substance, actually. Osteopaths, by definition, are nonconformists. So she stands out as a nonconformist. You could look at the ideas of cranial bones being looked at as a vertebrae and say it's crazy. And I'm not saying I agree with it at all. Actually, I don't. But the fact that she saw it and it provided some insight for her, that we need to keep alive in osteopathy for people to be free to find their own conclusions. When you say that, the other comment, she had concepts but nothing on technique. She did techniques. But what she did, it went to the unknown. You're talking about an early part of the time before the internet, before people were filming, and we just don't know what she did. So what makes her stand out is she had very different ideas. That's what makes her stand out. And it should encourage us to at least not be afraid to have our own ideas. Certainly Dr. Still was. Dr. Still was not welcomed with his different ideas at his time. He was nothing but plagued by lawsuits, difficulty, every difficulty a person can have. Dr. Still had it. So a lot of great people that swim upstream go in the opposite direction. They get adversity. They don't get medals and awards. Recognizing differentiations in the positions of sutures, do we need to change our hand placements while administration of cranial treatment? Well, you're going to treat what you feel. So in the case of normal anatomy, you know how to approach normal anatomy. In the case of abnormal anatomy, I've done cranial on people that have plates in their heads where the sutures aren't where they were supposed to be. Plates are covering part of the parietal, part of the temporal bone. You just have to improvise. You can't treat where there isn't a suture.